Hey everybody, this is Kara Crossway Brindle back on another video, this time to talk about publishing and books. So I have an amazing colleague with me today. I have Kate King with us, and she is a published author once and here soon again for a second book. Kate, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would love for you to kick us off by sharing who you are and what you're up to these days, and then we'll talk books. I know that's a big
Yeah.
question from our community.
Yeah. I'm the owner and founder of the Radiant Life Project. I've been a licensed psychotherapist and a board certified art therapist for about 15 years now, working in private practice. And in 2014, I published my first book called The Authentic Mother. And my new book, The Radiant Life Project, is coming out this November. So it's been a mixture
Yay!
of clinical work and writing. I'm also an artist. I do some public speaking. So there's just a whole lot that I like to offer the world.
Yes, and this is why we've connected because we both have these like-minded projects. And I'm excited to have people hear about your journey. So I know we had reconnected around publishing and pursuing either a publisher versus the self-publishing route, which is a common question. You want to speak to what your experience was like in 2014 versus now?
Sure. Yeah. So in 2014, the whole experience sort of fell in my lap. I was a brand new mom and I was having a tough time adjusting to life as a mom with a new baby. And so I had just been kind of writing about that experience, not really thinking about publishing it. And then a friend of mine had worked with her husband's publishing company, which was just a small little publishing house that essentially now I understand it was kind of the hybrid model where I did a lot of the work that you would do if you were self-publishing, but then I got to use his publisher's ISBN number and kind of his publisher's stamp so that it wasn't officially self-published. And so that experience used it's a platform called Create Space that I don't think is around anymore, but it really linked in with the Kindle Direct Publishing, and it had print on demand with paperback. So it was a great way to start for me, and it really didn't have a whole lot of bells and whistles included with that publisher because it was mostly the understanding that I was creating this and doing most of the work. So I did that experience and then I enjoyed the writing so much. And I had wished that there was another way for me to sort of blast it out. I wanted a little bit bigger marketing and I don't have a marketing degree. And so I felt like a team of people who were experts would have been a good idea to just sort of help me. So then I decided to take that route with my current publishing process to try to fill in some of those gaps that I didn't get.
Yeah. So I feel like you're naturally starting to talk about like kind of the pros and cons as people look at these options, right? Whether it's the hybrid option in the middle versus the self-published option versus the publisher option. So if you and I just start talking about like self-published to start, just because I think a lot of people do gravitate towards that. Maybe it's limited funds to pursue a publisher, or maybe it's they just want to see what the experience is like, and that feels like low risk to put something out online. What would you say some of the pros are of self-publishing in your experience?
Well, I think the most beautiful thing about self-publishing is you don't have to have anyone agree to sign you on. You get to be the entire team for yourself. And if you think your book is something of value and some beacon of light that you want to share, you can, and nobody's going to stand in your way. I think with the way technology has evolved and all the accessibility we have through the internet, it's a pretty viable option for people who either don't want to go through all the hoops it takes to apply to work with a publisher and to sort of, give up the creative control that you have to when you work with a publisher. But on the other hand, I think it can be costly to self-publish because it's always a good idea to hire an editor. And you don't have to if you're self-publishing. You can just publish your manuscript raw, but it's always a good idea. So then you have to pay. First of all, you have to find a freelance editor, cover designer, formatter, all the people to help. And then they need to be paid. Whereas working with a traditional publisher, they pay you and then you get access to that. So that's one of the kind of pro cons in terms of cost.
Yeah.
But I think maybe the best piece around the self-publishing is full creative control and no permissions from anyone but yourself.
Yeah. So everything from how you want your cover design to look to the title to the details inside. I have to agree, the editor is crucial in my experience. I tried to create my Kindle version, and for those of you viewers who haven't tried this yet, it's user friendly, but it still has some like things that happen where it formats bizarrely and out of sync. And for my first book, my co-written book on clinical supervision, we tried our best to edit it ourselves, and it took hours and just did not come out the way I wanted it. So my perfectionist side was like, nope, we're not doing that again. And we found a phenomenal editor that we use for everything now. So this will actually come out in a blog that you all will see here soon. It's just some of my favorite people to work with all the pieces that would help a self-publisher be successful, including making time and money for an editor, because they will save you hours upon hours of you trying to tweak margins and indexes. And yeah, I literally wanted to pull my hair out.
Yeah. I tried
So
to cut corners with that with my first book, and I had a friend of mine do some editing, just sort of read through it and let me know how it flowed and look for typos. And then when I got that back, it didn't really meet the bar. And so then I ended up still having to go hire an editor.
oh
So
gosh.
now I wish I would have just not tried to cut that corner, just go straight for the editor from the beginning and get it done right, have it done in one fell swoop and move on.
Yeah, and I know there are some different kinds of people that do this. So there's the traditional editor, like you said, that's like a freelance that you can hire. We also have different organizations locally and nationally who are offering this as part of like a publishing package where they're like, we'll help create the cover design, we'll do the editing, we'll do the formatting, we'll help you launch it, which obviously then has a fee for it as well. But yeah, I think for most people who choose the self-publish route, it's because they want that creative freedom that you named of, I want to write it the way I want to write it. I want it to be the length I want, that there's no parameters around how many words or titles or even character names, which I know has happened to our colleagues where they had to adjust names of characters or people in the book, because of the vision of the publisher.
Right.
So that changes everything. If we were to shift towards the what is not formal, there we go, formal publisher, what would you say are some of the things that are worth reiterating as to why that's important or a good choice for folks?
Well, I think that some people have in their mind this, there's like a validity that comes with when you're working with a traditional publishing house. I don't actually know how true that narrative is. I think that's a lot of buildup that people put, like, I'm not a real author unless I work for HarperCollins or Penguin, something like that. And so I think it's a good invitation to look at yourself and what you're bringing into your process in terms of expectations, narratives, pressures about self-worth, or some imposter syndrome stuff. It's always a good opportunity to do your own work.
Mm-hmm.
However, with that being said, working with a traditional publishing house, so far for me, it's been really a great experience. First of all, it is completely no cost to me. In fact, I got paid. I got an advance. So that's been really great. I also trust that the team, the traditional publishing house has kind of compiled, is filled with experts who really know their trade. So, for example, just this week, I ended up getting 5 different possible cover designs for the book. And I'm an artist, so I probably could have designed my own cover. I did that with my first one, but it was just really neat to see this from a group of graphic designers who designed book covers exclusively all day long, year after year. It just felt really neat to be exposed to that expertise. So things
Nice.
like that I think are really beneficial. Also, there are distribution channels that publishers have that are just built over their connections with, different bookstores, different magazines. They just have more connections because they're larger than I am as a single author. They have years and years in the industry and all the connections that go with it. And they have connections if you want to hire additional support. For example, I'm going to probably hire an independent PR specialist to help me with marketing. And so they gave me a list of vetted PR specialists who they've worked with, who they trust. And so it just makes the legwork a little shorter on my end because I can trust that process from them.
Yeah, I love sharing this experience. I know that obviously for our viewers, the disclaimer is each publisher is different in what they offer, whether it's in advance or not. Contracts, of course, will outline all of these things. But yes, I think you and I both can agree that we pursued a publisher or agreed to a contract with a publisher because it would serve our needs for connections and marketing and reach because we believe there's something in our books that is of worth for others to see or hear or read. So yeah, I appreciate how you started this by saying like if it's about self-worth, and I've heard this from our colleagues of like you've made it when you've been published by a particular publisher, if that's the goal. In the same vein as someone saying like you've made it if you've done a TED talk, like we just hold it to a certain standard. And so I love that you named like let's take a look at that, make sure that that's not the only agenda, because there's probably a lot of things to consider when you pick a publisher, even to the point of putting out proposals. So everything from is it a publisher that meets your audience that you want to reach? Is it because they're well known? Is it because they're local? Is it because they allow their authors creative freedom? There's probably all sorts of reasons that people pick the publishers that they do. And I know several of our colleagues have put out proposals to multiple publishers for that reason to kind of see how it would play out. So yeah, I mean, is this in alignment with kind of your thoughts and the experience you've had so far?
Yes, I was shocked by the proposal process because with my first book, I didn't have that because it was just a friend of mine making this connection for me. So I did not know that publishers require a proposal that takes 4 to 6 months to really write well and is like 80 to 100 pages of written. It's a complete and comprehensive business plan for your book. And I just had no idea. So that was a really great learning process for me. I actually hired an author coach along the way because I realized I was a little out of my depth and I didn't want to wing it. So I felt like that was money well spent and time well spent. And the proposal is just really, really detailed. And you can create a proposal that can be kind of molded and cut and pasted for various publishers, but different publishers have specific questions that they want to know that may differ from others. So on a publisher's website, if you scroll down to the very bottom to the footnotes section, there's usually a link for submissions or like how to submit your manuscript. And so if you click on that link, it tells you what they want you to submit. And some of them want you to include a couple of chapters. Some of them don't. Some of them want just a one-page query. Others want the full proposal. So it's really important to not send them something they don't want and to be really conscientious about only providing what they ask for because they're busy and they receive so many submissions. They don't want to read more than they want to read. And some publishers will say, even on that page, that you can submit and they may never get back to you. So they'll get back to you if it's a yes. And if you haven't heard from them in 3 months, you can assume it's a no, where other publishers will get back to you either way, which I personally really appreciate just to sort of close the loop. But I don't think it's a universal expectation. So, and then the hybrid publishing track, which is somewhere between self-publishing and traditional publishing, it has its own proposal process, but it's shorter. And a hybrid publisher is more likely to take on your book because you pay them upfront. And so it's kind of like what you were saying in the beginning, where they provide editorial, marketing, graphic design, all of these to help you launch your book, but it doesn't have the structure of a traditional publishing house. And so those can be $7,000 to $10,000 to get your book written. That's probably your most expensive route, but it comes with all of those benefits. And that proposal process is shorter. It's just a couple of pages instead of 80 pages.
Right. Big difference there.
Yeah. So I also think it depends on each person. How much time do you have to submit your book? You know, if you're working a full job, if you're a parent, if you're caring for your elderly grandmother, like you just may not have time to do one of these really in-depth proposals. So self-publishing or hybrid publishing might be the most effective. Whereas for me, I happened to be on sabbatical from my private practice while I was writing that proposal. So writing that proposal ended up being my job, and I had the time and space to do it. So I think it's important to factor that in too.
Yes, I love that you named that. So I think for viewers, the thing to reiterate here is that there's no one correct choice or one correct route. It's really about what is in alignment with your values, your goals, your vision for your book, the time, the funds that you have available, to say this is the route that is best for me. Knowing that each publisher has a different expectation of the proposal process, a different expectation of the contract, advance or no advance, like all sorts of components here that we can go into the weeds in, but we're not going to today. So this just gives you probably more questions than even just the answers we provided. It probably led to some more questions as viewers of this video. But I know that Kate and I are both willing to talk about our experience, and we also have the connections now to say, like, here's a book coach, or here's an editor, or here's somebody that we've enjoyed working with, if that would help you in your journey. Any last thoughts, Kate, for our audience today?
Just one more from my experience. I had a couple of people in my life who were published authors or who worked in the publishing industry. So I reached out to them early on to ask if they had connections for me or advice. And even though that's generally a good thing to do, I would not recommend doing it because the feedback that I got from these people was essentially, you're not going to get published by a traditional publishing house unless you have
Oh,
hundreds of thousands of followers, unless you have this huge platform. Like they're not looking for unknown names. I got a lot of really discouraging
oh,
advice where they were like, you should just self-publish this, try to get your platform bigger, and then go for the publishing house. And I just want everyone out there to know that you and I are both examples of people who we're not celebrities, and
no.
we still landed with really wonderful publishers. So I think you have to just believe in yourself and not be looking in the reflections of other people who in your mind have made it,
Mm,
for their approval. Or, I just think sometimes you got to steer your own ship and just stay focused on your own project.
beautiful advice. Yes. And I feel like that some of those naysayers, it's because they haven't done the thing and they feel like it's too daunting, and that's their narrative being projected on us. So I know that wasn't the people that you reached out to say, what was your process? But I imagine some of the people watching this video are going to go to colleagues, friends, family, and say, I want to write a book, and might still have a meh, meh kind of response,
Yeah.
for all sorts of other reasons. So thank you for naming that. And I'm sorry that was your experience. And I will be the first to champion when your book is out, because we're going to do another video featuring your book, to just, put that out there for those folks. Be like, look, see, she did it. So
Thank
I look
you.
forward to that. Well, Kate, thank you for sharing your experience. I really feel like this video is going to help a lot of people as they think about this as a goal for their career. And I'll make sure to include some contact info for you if you're comfortable with that. So if people want to reach out or do a consult, I know that both of us have different experiences we could share. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's been great talking to you.
Absolutely. Well, viewers, stay tuned for more videos. Again, we're going to have Kate back for a launch of her book when it comes out in the fall. So stay tuned for that. We'll see you next time.